You're listening to the No Gray Areas podcast with Patrick McCullough. Our guest today is Kevin Kidd. He teaches us how our failures become life lessons and what it means to fail fast and fail forward. Let's jump in.
So, Kevin, welcome to the No Gray Areas podcast. So good to have you here. We've known each other for about a year now, right?
That's right.
I think it's coming on a year.
Yep.
But you have a fascinating story, fascinating background, at least to me, because I had two kids in the Marine Corps. My dad was in the Marine Corps, but you spent some time in the Marine Corps, right? Out of high school?
I did. Yeah, 18 years old. I enlisted in the Marine Corps. That was 1986.
Yeah.
Just had my 35th anniversary, September 2nd, which I had to reflect on that. When
Wow.
I actually entered
35 years ago,
35 years
September
ago.
2nd, you went into the Marine Corps?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Long
Now,
time.
you did something special in the Marine Corps, though, which some of the audience wouldn't understand, but you were Marine Recon, right?
I was.
That's a big deal,
Yeah.
which means for the audience that doesn't know, you can run and run
I could
and
run.
run and
Yeah,
run. Okay,
30 years ago,
good,
I could run.
good. Yeah, but that's a lot of running.
It was a lot of running.
Pretty
A lot of
impressive.
swimming.
Yeah.
Yeah. a
Yeah.
lot of
What
that.
else did you do in the Marine Corps? What
Well,
was,
you know, I
you had
I
embassy
really,
duty?
yeah, I had an interesting career because I did spend 6.5 years in the Marines. And during that time, I actually had three MOSs, which is your military occupational specialist,
Yeah,
which is your
yeah.
job title,
Job.
which most Marines only have one. And they
Yeah.
and now I think Josiah may have two
Yeah,
at
he's
this
had
point.
two.
Yeah.
My son, yeah.
But I had 3 in 6.5 years, which most, career Marines may have 3 or 4, 20 plus
Yeah,
years.
so
So I did a lot in a short period of time.
Yep.
And so I did. I started out in infantry. I was 0 through 11. And then I went to recon as 0 through 21. And then I finished up as 8151, which is Marine Security Guard.
So you saw a lot of success during those years, right?
I did. I had a very good military career. Had I stayed in, I think I was on the right path to
Yeah.
have a very long career. Unfortunately, there was a president inaugurated in January of '93 that changed my mind,
Yeah.
and the rest is history.
You
from
didn't want
there.
to be in the military?
No, not at that
Okay,
time.
okay,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
not a good time to stay in.
Yep.
So
yeah.
I did get out.
So you get out of the Marine Corps, and did you go right into personal security, or what was the?
Yeah, and not around. I kind of bumped around for a couple of years trying
Yeah.
to figure out what I was going to do, and then ultimately I kind of went back to where my career had brought me to that point. And I got into, high level security in Los Angeles, so I did the Hollywood thing for about
Yeah,
4 years.
Yeah. You've thrown out some names on people and you don't have to now if you don't want to,
Yeah.
but it was definitely high level security.
Yeah,
you
I was
weren't-
around a lot of very
You weren't
famous-
guarding someone like me. You were guarding like famous people. But
Yeah.
okay, so again, you saw a lot of success then during those years, right?
I did, and from there, I decided to leave. LA was not for me. I
Yeah.
did my 4 years. That was enough.
Because you grew up where?
Well, I grew up in Arkansas,
Yeah.
and so I'm just a Southern
So,
boy.
Yeah, you can hear it.
Served as a
You
Marine.
still hear a little bit of
Yeah,
Arkansas. in you, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you are in LA then working security, and you're like, this LA lifestyle isn't for me.
It was not for me.
Okay.
No, absolutely. I had a good experience, a lot of exposure. Like you said, I met a lot of famous people, but I was ready to move on. And that's took me to another successful career is in corporate security. I ended up working for Sony, and I spent 12 years
Yeah.
in Mexico, crossing the border every day. So that was another interesting period of my life.
Yeah.
To do
So were
that.
you in Texas at that time then?
I started out in California, so I spent a year in Tijuana, Mexico, and then I transferred out to Laredo, Texas on the border.
Yeah.
And I crossed over to Nuevo Laredo, and
Yeah.
we had 2 Sony facilities there, and I was in charge of security for that. So I did that for 11 years.
Well, this is the part of your story though that's interesting, because then you go from there and you chase a dream, right? Something that you had dreamed for a long time.
Yeah,
Am I correct in that?
you are correct. At that point, my kids were young. They were both born in Texas, and I decided, 11 years crossing the border was kind of, pushing at that point. I mean, I was there during all the Zetas and the El Chapo wars that were going on. So
Yeah.
I was dodging a lot of battles.
Not
going
a
back
safe
and
time
forth.
to be
It
going
was
back
not
and
a
forth.
safe time
Yes.
being in Mexico, exactly.
Yeah.
And so kind of felt like I kind of pushed my luck. It was time to make a change. And I wanted my kids to kind of go back and experience where I grew up, and be around my family, their grandma, grandpa, their aunts and uncles and cousins and all that. And so we decided to make that move. And I took my, I like to say, my Sony money that I made over 12 years and invested in a restaurant, which was kind of a dream of mine at the time. I'd spent, 10 years in Southern California, and then, of course, another 11 years in South Texas. And I was experienced at all this Mexican food, tacos and burritos and all these things. And so I had this crazy idea to open Mexican restaurants.
Well, and anybody that knows you, Kevin,
Yeah.
I've just known you for about a year. I really like you, but I really, really, really like the food you make. You
Well,
love to
it is a passion of
cook, and
mine.
it
I enjoy it.
is.
I
You
enjoy
you
it.
don't have to hang around you very long to
It's
know
like
that.
therapy, you know, it
Yeah.
really is. And I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And it's kind of a family thing for us,
Yeah.
you know, is that we hang out and cook,
Well,
you know, together.
anybody that's hanging around you gets a lot of enjoyment out of it as well, for
Yeah,
sure.
well,
But
I like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So you basically take everything that you have
Mhm.
at the time. You have a family now, 2 kids. You move back to Arkansas and you invest it all in a restaurant. You're going to launch this restaurant, and you had told me before that you were even thinking at some point maybe franchising. And how long did you do that?
I did it for a long, tough 2 years.
Yeah, yeah,
It was the hardest 2 years of my life.
yeah.
I think I took maybe 4 days off in 2 years.
So you're working,
Yeah.
working. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, you and I are on a boat together. We're just visiting, and I asked you the question, just wanting to get to know you even better. And I said, "So, what was one of the lowest points in your life?" And what did you say?
Well, that's an easy one because it was during that time period. It was probably actually maybe 2 weeks before I actually closed the restaurant, and I realized that I can't sail the ship any longer. It's going down, you
Yeah.
know. And you know, it was that point that I was like, okay, I just invested all my money, 2 years of my time. Here I'm, you know, 44, 45 years old. I think I was 44 at that time. And, you know, what am I going to do? You know, not only what am I going to do, but now I've let my wife, my kids down, my employees, you know, all my friends.
So
that,
you're carrying all the
Yeah, I was
burdens
carrying
of
all
that.
that
It's
burden.
not just a
Yeah.
crushed dream; it's the burdens of
Absolutely.
letting people down.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that was a big part of it.
Wow.
And you know, I just put so much into it, and you know, I just didn't know what I was going to do. You know,
Yeah.
and the idea of I've got to tell these people that sorry, we're closing, and you're not going to have a job. You know, and obviously, you know, I'd been a good provider for my family up until that point. You know,
Yeah.
I'd always provided for them. We'd made a good living and good lifestyle, and now I'm like, we're getting ready to lose it all.
Yeah.
And so it was a tough time. There's no doubt.
You know, Kevin, when you told me that on the boat a few weeks ago, that's where I knew I had to have you on this podcast because who among us in this audience hasn't had low moments in life? Who hasn't felt dreams crushed? Who hasn't felt the weight of letting other people down? And this podcast is all about the power of choices, the importance of choices. But as you and I kept talking about that on the boat, it just led to even more and more conversation that I think the audience could really connect with because there wasn't a period after that. Like the story, your story didn't end after that. It was the
No.
low moment, the lowest moment of your life. But
Yeah.
here you are years later, right?
Yeah. 7
You're
years
still
later.
alive.
I'm still alive.
You still have
Still
your family.
going. Yeah. All of that.
Yeah,
It's all good.
yeah.
Yeah.
And isn't that true then, again, for all of us, we have those low moments. But do you remember what you said to me when I said, so what happened after that?
Well, several things. I think the one that stood out the most, you know, is we talked about, you know, I felt like a failure, you know, at that point. And I'd mentioned something as like, you know, if you don't fail in life, then you're not probably doing anything.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
That's so good because that was the part that connected with me when you said that, because I think everyone's failed, or most everybody's failed
Yeah.
at something. But if you haven't, are you really going after life? Like
Yeah.
you went after a dream.
I did. Yeah.
But the difficult thing is in that moment. Like right now, it's 7 years later, and you're looking back, and you can talk about. But in that moment, it's just the
Oh,
raw
yeah.
emotions of feeling like a failure. Why'd you feel like a failure, though?
Well, I mean, I think it was just that I felt so exposed. You know, I'd been gone. You know, I had my military career, and then you know a good career in corporate security, and I came home after 25 years of you know being away, not living there, and I really just put it all out there. And so it wasn't. I failed in a city of 10 million people. I failed in a small town that everybody knew me.
Everybody knew you. You grew
Yeah.
up there. Your family
Yeah.
was there.
And so that
Yeah.
was, you know, it was hard, you know,
Yeah.
to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so just had to get through that, you know.
Well, and the other side of it too is your story leading up to it, right? Like you, Marine Corps, it's success, success, success. You get out, you go into personal security and corporate security, and success, success. Then
Mhm.
you go after this dream,
Mhm.
and it felt like failure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
It did.
yeah.
It
And I
did.
keep saying felt like because I don't necessarily want to call it failure, right? Because is it really a failure to go after a dream, put everything into it, and it just doesn't work? I mean,
Absolutely. You know, in hindsight, you look at that, and that is true. You know,
yeah,
and you know, speaking of that, I'll talk about this book a little bit because, and I'll go back. I think I already told you this story, but you know, I remember going to my pastor in Jonesboro, Arkansas at that time. He actually became a pretty good friend of mine, and his name Terry Watson.
and you're talking about at the time
At
that
this
lost
was
everything.
yeah,
feeling
right.
failed.
Actually, I think it was right after I closed, and then
So
I went.
you're right in the middle of
Oh
this
yeah.
low point.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember going into him and, you know, and just kind of telling, you know, where I was at and how I felt. And, you know, and I just told him, I said, I really feel like I'm letting my family down, you know,
Yeah.
and he gave me a big hug and I'll never forget it. And he just said, Kevin, he goes, you're not letting your family down. He goes, trust
Yeah.
me. He goes, you're going to be all right and your family will be all right. And he gave me this book,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Failing Forward. And I know that we've
By
had this
John
conversation.
Maxwell. Failing
John
Forward,
Maxwell, yeah. And I read this book. I've read it 3 times now, actually.
Yeah.
And so, if Terry's listening, I still have your book, by the way. And there's so many lessons in this book, you know, that are applicable to life, you
Yeah.
know, to get through the tough times. And, you know, and going back to that, it's interesting because I mentioned this to you about 3 weeks ago when we were on the boat. We were talking about this. Well, then a week later, I'm in California and I'm at a dinner with Matt Hayden, our friend Matt
Yeah.
Hayden.
Yeah.
And so he starts talking about this book, and I go, "Wait a minute, you know, I've read that book 3 times." And so he's like, "Really?" We're going back and
Yeah,
forth,
yeah.
and then he tells me an interesting story that he's on a business trip in South Carolina, and one of his friends, a female friend, they get talking about this book, and she goes, "Well, I know John Maxwell, and he's here." And so he ended up getting introduced to John Maxwell, you know, on
Yeah.
that same trip. And he's actually got some ideas where he wants to go with this in the future. But it was interesting that, you know, within a 3-week period, this has come up 2 times with 2 different, you know,
Yeah.
conversations. And so,
Yeah.
really, really good book. I would recommend it to anybody, you know, and whether or not you've, you know, had failures, at some point you're going to,
Yep. Yep.
and it'll either prepare you or it'll help you get through it afterwards, either way.
When you told me about that book, Kevin, it connected with me so much because a phrase that I've used in my own life and some of my failures that I've had in the last 10 years, as you and I talked, you know, I turned 50 in a couple of months. My 40s were not comfortable years for me. They were difficult years at times because I had some failures. And so I would write to myself often, fail fast, fail forward, fail fast, fail forward, fail fast, fail forward. But how did this book, this idea of failing forward, how did that help you in that moment? You've read it 3 times, but the first time you read it, you were at the low point in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me understand that failure is not really a failure. It's just a lesson that you learn, and it's okay to fail.
Okay, say that again, because that's golden. It's not really failure. It's a
lesson. Yeah, it's a lesson in life, you know, and
Yeah.
you either learn from it or you go through another failure and you learn a harder lesson. But at some point, you're going to have to learn from those lessons to get,
Yeah.
you know, which is interesting because you just said that. I like that. And this is just one of many quotes in this, is like, the only way you can get ahead is to fail early, fail often, and fail forward. I love that.
fail
And that-
early,
and that-
fail
often,
and
fail forward. Yeah, and it doesn't matter what age. You know, obviously it's the earlier you learn that lesson, the
Yeah.
quicker you're going to get through it in life.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter where you're at in life, you're going to, you know, apply that. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I think, which is the story in here is that Orville Redenbacher, you know, he spent 40 years trying to create the perfect popcorn kettle. He didn't succeed until he was in his early 60s. You know,
Yeah.
and so he spent his whole life doing that. And you think at some point he would have given up,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and there's many stories like that of very successful people that you on the outside you just say, oh, he's successful and
Yeah.
he had it easy, but no, that's not the case. Probably most people that are successful or have had struggles at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And well, you're saying most people, I would guess that we would say everyone. Like there's
Yeah.
no one that gets through this life. In fact, if
Mhm.
you remember, I said that to you on the boat. I said, no one gets through this life without low points, without failures, right? And do you remember what you said?
I don't
it
remember
was
what I said
good.
to that. I
You
don't
said,
remember.
you said, well, unless they're not trying anything.
Oh, yeah, I
Unless
did
they're
say
not
that.
trying at anything, unless they're
Yeah.
not going after their dreams.
Yeah.
But the truth
That's
is
true.
anybody that's successful probably looks back and has those low points, those times of failure.
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
thousands of stories, you know, tens of thousands. Hell,
yeah.
of
Yeah.
successful people. They've had struggles, and most people don't know. So it's important to understand that, failure is a part of life.
Yeah.
And, it's just a matter of whether you're going to get up and keep going and work through it. And that's one of the things that I learned through that. I remember somebody was asking me a couple years after I went through that, and they were saying, well, what did you learn, from that? I says, well, I'm not afraid to fail anymore. Once you do it and go through it, you're like, okay, I'm still here, and again, like we said, it all comes back to a lesson in life. And so
I'm still here.
yeah,
That's a great line.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
yeah,
Because again, Kevin, you and I are about the same age. Hopefully we get to hang out a lot in the next couple of years, but if we're given another 2 decades of life, we're going to fail again at something, aren't we?
oh, absolutely. I would
Hopefully
think
we
so.
fail fast, fail forward.
Yeah,
But the
And learn
line that
from
we
it.
could put is say, I'm still here.
yeah.
That sounds like a Marine Corps thing to say. I'm still here.
It might be. I don't know. There's a
Love
lot of
it.
Marine Corps sayings.
Yeah, love it. This is so helpful. I can guarantee you there's not a single person listening in our audience that isn't in the midst of failure or doesn't look back in the past and have times of failure, those low points in life, or if they're given very much life, aren't going to have those times again in the future. So thanks for sharing. But before you go, this is the fun part of this show because it's ironic. We call this no gray areas. But I ask all of our guests, give me 2 truths and a lie about yourself and see if we as an audience can figure it out.
Okay.
2 truths and a lie.
In China, by the way, I was stationed in China as part of my embassy duty. I went on a 3-mile run with former President Jimmy Carter and his wife, Rosalind. Of course, remember, this is 30 years ago. This isn't recently, if anybody knows how old they are now. This was a long time ago. In Geneva, which was the next place, Geneva, Switzerland, I had breakfast with Vice President Dan Quayle. Another one, this is kind of fun. I rode an elephant in Bangkok, Thailand.
Wow. All right. This is tough. So 2 of those are truths. So in China, you went running with Jimmy Carter and his wife. In Geneva, you had a meal with Vice President
Dan
Quayle, and you rode an elephant. Man, those all
In
sound like
Thailand.
truths to me. I'm gonna say the Dan Quayle one is a lie.
That's a good choice.
Is it? I got
Yes,
it.
You did. I actually did not. It was interesting. I did meet with him. We had a photo op. He had breakfast with the ambassador, and after the breakfast, he came out and had a photo op with the Marines, and I do have a picture of that. So.
Wow. Okay, so you did get to meet him.
Oh, I
right?
did meet him. Yeah, I've got a picture.
So
with him.
one of the truths is you went out for a run with President Jimmy Carter and his wife.
That is true.
Wow. But you're Marine Recon, so I just want to know,
that was
did
easy.
they keep up with you?
No, we had to keep up with them as far as behind them.
Yeah.
So it was a slow run.
Yeah, it was. We won't. Yeah, most president. By the time you're president, you have
Yeah,
an
I think he
excuse
was.
to-
I think he was probably in his early 60s at that time.
Yeah, and at that time you could run forever. So
I could at
You
that time.
probably were breathing very easily at that.
Yeah, it was an easy run. Yeah.
Hey, Kevin, thanks so much for sharing your story with us. I really wanted you on here because, again, your story is just like all of us. I love the fact that you can say, I'm still here, and I'm glad you're still here, man.
Yeah,
Good to
me
have
too.
you as a friend. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks, Pat.
Thanks for listening to the No Gray Areas podcast. To dive deeper into the story, be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and check out nograyAreas.com.